Hello, everyone. Happy Monday, or maybe the start of Tuesday, depending on where you're at in the world today. So, I'm Kyler Cheatham, guest hosting here for Christy Barber Live. Obviously, I am here with Christy Barber. And we're excited to have this conversation with you today about how to build a scalable accounting department. Last week, we kind of chatted about what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What's the difference between a founder and a CEO? And scaling the accounting department is really kind of one of the first pieces that you need to be able to kind of have a roadmap for and really understand the finance piece is the foundations, right? Flashy fails fast. Accounting is not known for being flashy. They're foundational. So I am just on here for the alliteration this morning. But before we kind of get into this conversation and get Christy's insights, just a few logistics so we can see all of the comments no matter where you're joining us from today on the side here. So we will bring some of those up as we usually do to answer those questions. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and a few other channels here. If you don't follow Christy Barber Consulting, highly recommend you do that, especially if you're looking at accounting needs as far as organizational structure, finance, technology, just QuickBooks setup, all of those different things. She's got thousands of videos on those. So highly recommend that. I ask you if you have any insight to comment that in here too. We don't pretend to know everything. We just know some things. And part of this is just really looking at the insights that you can bring as well as a community. It's conversational. So with that, happy Monday, Christy. How are you today?
Thanks. I am well rested. I was lazy this weekend and pretty much slept the entire day yesterday, and it was lovely. Every once in a while, you just need those days.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it's like a mini vacation.
Yes.
That you can take, and just like I always call it, like taking a coma, just take a 12-hour nap and recharge. But now you're here, now you're with us to talk about building a scalable accounting department. Why is this conversation important to small to medium-sized businesses?
This is really important, and it's so timely, which I'm glad we're doing this comment today, because I've had 3 clients in the last about week and a half actually sign on to work with me for this specific reason, because they're growing and they know that things aren't in the right place, and it's just going to cause more problems. So I would say the most important reason for all of this is if you prepare your accounting department from day one, you're not going to have all these pain points later on of, hey, what system am I using? I outgrew my Excel spreadsheet. I don't have anybody that can actually help me with my bookkeeping or any other parts of a team or technology that comes into it. They all need to come from day one. Especially when you're first starting, you need to be able to invoice clients. And I know a lot of people that I've worked with, they use Excel to build invoices, and that's great, except there's no traceability. There's no checks and balances, all that fun stuff. And I know we all love Excel. Excel serves so many great purposes for small business until it kind of comes to a few of those things where you actually do need some specific accounting technology.
Absolutely. So what comes first, the organizational structure or the technology?
I would say, well, it kind of depends. So a lot of founders, some of them are very capable to just say, hey, I know I need QuickBooks. They'll watch a few YouTube videos, figure out how to make invoices and go from there. Then they kind of go the route of, I need somebody to manage this for me. So I think if a founder has a good understanding of technology and knows how to make invoices, it's fine to go, buy the QuickBooks and kind of get things going that route. If you're not, then I would say, hey, really do your due diligence. Find a bookkeeper ahead of time to say, this is what I'm planning on doing. I don't know which technology to go with. And can you help get that set up for me?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that a lot of that depends on the evaluation, right? The assessment of what you're doing. And that's where, a lot of times your team comes in is kind of helping to level set, because it totally is different for each organization depending on what their requirements are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's kind of just get into some of these questions. They're already coming in. Thank you so much for joining us today in this conversation. Definitely continue to put them in here as always if we don't get to them. We usually only take about 30 minutes to go live on Mondays. So let's just make sure that we can get to those later in the day as well. So you can drop them in here. So this one's interesting. What are the bare minimum accounting roles a startup should hire from day one?
Day one, it always should be you need your CPA.
Mhm.
I highly, highly recommend going that route. Don't use H&R Block to do your taxes. Don't use QuickBooks to do your taxes, the TurboTax, which they own now. They don't know who you are. They don't know how to help you plan. So always get a CPA day one. If you don't know anybody, start asking folks around. Feel free to reach out to me. I have a pretty good network of CPAs in various states that I recommend and work with. Then second would be to find a bookkeeper. Either you bring them, in-house because you have a lot going on, or it's somebody, hey, you work with a couple of hours a month and they're making sure that you're all up to date on everything.
And something you taught me in this conversation is you can actually interview different CPAs. Like
Mhm.
there's different CPAs that specialize in different things. I, as someone that doesn't have a huge financial background, didn't really realize that until I just mentioned to Christy that, hey, I don't know about our CPA. I don't know about, and she was like, well, we'll go interview like 3 or 4 others. And I was like, oh, I'd never even like really thought about doing that. So, being able to have someone that understands how that startup foundation works. Hopefully you're a little bit more financially savvy than myself, but that is, something that you can consider is making sure they're the right fit for your business as well.
And
So
that's big because people forget how to do that, or they think that, well, I talked to one CPA, I have to go with them. And it's
exactly.
not that way. Be very strategic in the questions you ask them, especially if you're in a certain type of industry. If you're in construction, you want a CPA that understands construction or e-commerce, things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Industry specific. Very,
Hmm.
very good. And what about this question on LinkedIn? What tech stack should a new company consider for accounting from day one? So, what technology do you really need to have in place, or do you need a technology from day one? Maybe that's a barrier to starting a business.
Hmm. The one thing you do need day one is you do need an accounting software.
Mhm.
I highly recommend QuickBooks. That is my favorite. Even though I will tell you the things I like and don't
Mhm.
like about them, they overall are one of the best startup softwares for small business. There are other things out there like Zero, which it's difficult to use. Zero is really good if you live outside the United States.
Mhm.
There's also FreshBooks, which to me, it's just not complex enough for small business. It just looks
Mhm.
pretty, which sometimes we're all drawn to,
Yeah.
which is nice. You want an environment that looks well. So I would say that's always a must. And then making sure if you do have employees, have a payroll software. I do not recommend QuickBooks payroll. I think it's very cumbersome. The reporting isn't done well. It's difficult to make sure that you're compliant with everything. And I always recommend finding somebody local. So I work with a local company called Easy Track
Mhm.
Payroll that's up in Boulder, Colorado. They're awesome. You can talk to them. They're making sure that you're up to date on whatever's going on in your state. And
Mm.
that's huge. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And then there's kind of like a different phase for anything else you would want to bring in. If you're an e-commerce company, you're going to need Shopify from day one because that's how your orders are coming in. And you'll need some software like an A2X or ConnectBooks, which you've heard me talk about a lot of times, to integrate those data points from Shopify into QuickBooks. So that's one part. And then as you grow, you might need some expense management software. You might one day outgrow QuickBooks, or you might need a inventory management, all of those things. But day one, I would say make sure you have an accounting software, which my plug is for QuickBooks always. And then some type if you have employees to be able to pay them.
Absolutely. Payroll is so complex, and even if, it's not something that you don't have, 2,000 employees, it still is something that you want to get right
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time. So, it's even as people that implement financial software, we've sometimes gotten payroll wrong.
Mhm.
And that, is very, very, very serious to us, right? In making sure that employees get paid on time. It's mostly just not knowing how the system works, but having someone in your corner that kind of help you set that up is so, so critical. So
And it's
also,
complex too.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think the funny thing about payroll is it always leans on the accountant of, well, you should just know. And it's like, yeah, I can run payroll all day, any day. But as far as staying up on all of the new HR trends, that's usually where you have some type of HR consultant, coming alongside of you to help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. First, you need those foundations. And then I mean, as someone, who's very intentional about the people that we bring into our organization, HR consulting is definitely something that you want to consider as well when you get to that point.
Yeah.
So there's, and bringing in experts is never a bad thing, just to make sure that you're set up for success. So I like this question too. What skill sets should you prioritize early in accounting hires to ensure scalability?
Okay, this one can get fun. Actually, because there are a whole different, I don't know, there's so many different skill sets when it comes to accounting hires. And even with the bookkeepers that you hire in the beginning, you may have bookkeepers that only know how to reconcile. They don't know how to do journal entries. They don't know how to manage your balance sheet. And you need to make sure that when you're interviewing them in the beginning, they know how to do all of those things. They know how to break out a loan, and they know how to handle like asset purchases and selling of assets, all of those things. Because I've seen a lot of groups, even like various things in Facebook, and you'll have bookkeepers being like, hey, somebody has a loan, I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I think there's a lot of things where bookkeeping is one of those where people think, oh, I could work from home, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's so much more that goes into
Yeah.
it than just, hey, I'll just enter some bills in. There's a lot of skills that you need to know. And if you go get a certificate for that, or, go to school or whatever that looks like, you need to make sure that whomever you're hiring does have a really full knowledge. And I would even test them out on it. If you have QuickBooks already set up, sit there and be like, okay, enter a bill for me. Okay, enter in, I'm going to buy this car. Show me how this works. And that really eliminates a lot. I had a client a couple years ago that I was doing some CFO services for, and they needed to bring in a new bookkeeper to kind of help with the controller and everything. And she's like, oh, I have years experience doing this. And we put her in front of it. She didn't know how to navigate QuickBooks. And so, and it's one of those, you're not being truthful on your own
Mm-hmm.
skills. And she lied on her resume. Oh yeah, I have, years of experience. I'm like, you don't, because I could ask you a basic question and she didn't know how to put things in the right place. So every small business owner, make sure you're really doing your due diligence and who you hire, because bookkeepers are a dime a dozen in a lot of ways, because it's a lot of people that think they know what they're doing and they don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure they really have that skill set.
Yeah. And I think that, that's a great example of how you help clients too, because,
Mhm.
sitting in on those interviews or advising to those interviews really helps, some of these common mistakes, which brings me to this other audience
Oh, and
question.
I'll add real quick to it
Oh,
too. If you're looking for a bookkeeper and you haven't found anybody you like, my team and I, we provide those services to people. So if that's
yeah.
something you need, feel free to reach out. I have a small team that takes care of anything that people need, from getting the insides cleaned up to just maintain from there. And then that ensures that you have a good team and your numbers are telling you the proper story.
Absolutely. And that really is the foundation for any sort of accounting, automation, AI, anything like that you want to go to kind of that next level. Again, flashy fails
Yep.
without good data and strong infrastructure to support it. That's how you become so efficient and sophisticated, but you have to make those small steps first. So I think that's a great example. And so, what are the most common mistakes startups make when choosing their first accounting software, in particular?
Oh gosh, there's so many mistakes actually, I think
It
that
sounds like a
people
block.
choose
Yeah.
in finding that. I was looking for the question here
Oh,
actually.
it's over here. It's at 12:09. Sorry. Christy's driving from YouTube.
For the most right here. Here we go. Got it.
So many great
Most
questions.
common mistakes when choosing first accounting. I think some of it is cost, and I get that. You want to be able to be as cheap as possible, and I actually was talking to somebody last week about this, where certain softwares will give you a better discount in the beginning, and then they end up being more later on, but they kind of hook you in. They're like, "Oh, $10 a month for 4 months or 6 months," and then $82 going forward, something like that. And so it's just really talking through the clients and making sure, hey, this is a discount and then this is what the real price is. Don't be caught by that flashy number right here that's crossed out that says, hey, 50% discount or, something like that. Really make sure that you understand the price of it, and that it's really giving you what you need, because some people, they want to cut corners and it's like, oh, it's $10 a month, but it doesn't give me financial statements, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, but it makes invoices for me.
Mhm.
Fantastic. That's not going to help you in the long run, because it's not collecting any data to say how your business is doing. It's just writing invoices. So really making sure who you are and making sure that whatever that software is will align with you. And I will say 99.9% of all small businesses, QuickBooks will work for you day one, unless you're too big and I don't know, you sold a product and you went viral and you went from $0 yesterday to 10 million today. I don't
Mhm.
know. QuickBooks may not be able to handle that for you. And that's when you would want to talk to myself or somebody on my team
Mhm.
of, hey, what software would work for
Yeah.
us?
Yeah, that's where you want to kind of jump over QuickBooks, but like good for you for having that inventory, because most companies that don't have QuickBooks would be like, I don't even have that much product to be able to.
Exactly.
That is amazing. That's a great problem to have in looking at those types of things. But QuickBooks is a great piece. I think the challenges I see with QuickBooks is just not getting help setting it up, not treating it as an implementation, because
Right.
QuickBooks is not some software that comes in and has an implementation timeline. You can plug it in and you can use it, the next hour. But
Mhm.
the issue is if you create those bad habits, then those scale to the rest of the teams that you're hiring.
Oh, yeah, and I've been going through a cleanup with that for the last 5 months of just because you could hit start, essentially, you're like, "Put your credit card in, and here we go," but people didn't know technically how to use all of it and do the right chart of accounts, and so there's been a lot of cleanup with that. It's just being, I think cleaning up the right processes too of how they're entering in data points,
Mhm.
and it's hard to fix old habits when people get used to that. And so it's really important that day one, to your point, even though QuickBooks doesn't have a team that comes in, that is something that, I help a lot of companies do, and making sure that it's set up properly so
Mhm.
that you are set up for success and you're not having your CPA yell at you at the end of the year saying like, what is this garbage? Like, how do I even know what's going on?
But yeah, and those are two things. And I think a lot of founders, because they're so visionary and rightfully so, want to be a lean startup, that you're like, okay, I can get by for a while, and don't realize the amount of money that they'll have to invest to clean that up later. And that's so critical, because that's the most expensive part about being a startup, is those re's. Like, I got to redo this, I got to rehire
Mhm.
this, I've got to re-implement this, because I was trying to do it fast and dirty and be a lean startup at the beginning. But there are some things that you get what you pay for,
Oh,
right?
you totally do. And especially like in the beginning, because QuickBooks is like, oh, you want to put this to an uncategorized expense? Oh, sure, we'll let you do that, And then you look at the end of the month and nothing's in the right bucket of where it should be. And now you got to go hire somebody or go back through and spend this time to recategorize.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so let's go into how, and this is an interesting question, how do you balance technical depth with soft skills needed to influence operators, not just process numbers? So maybe like restructuring the question to say, what kind of soft skills do you need to consider when hiring your accounting team, if any?
Communication, not this one, right? Need to influence.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one. Communication is huge. And I have found that on the accounting side, just with interacting with people, there's a lot of people that get hired in that department that come from all different types of backgrounds. They may not have accounting background, they have a math background, or they have history, I don't know, banking, something like that. It's all over the place a lot of times because they can do data entry. But I've seen, because they know they're not from that background, they're very hesitant to ask the embarrassing questions of, hey, I saw this come through, I'm not sure what to do with it.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, you need to ask those questions, because even if you feel embarrassed to ask it, it's going to help you grow. It also helps your manager, further articulate that they know what they're doing as well. So I
Mhm.
think that's a huge one. And just having good understanding and being able to relate to whomever they speak to. So, like, for instance, a lot of times I'm working with the C-suite, or I'm down under and I'm on a controller side of things, and we're talking to, various managers or whatever. And being able to really meet the people where they are and understand what they're doing, understand, like, hey, there might be some change management in here because people are reluctant to a particular process to make things better, all of those things. So I think it's just knowing who, and no, I'll add one other thing: people that are wanting to learn to. I know it's not necessarily a soft
Mhm.
skill, but
Yeah, it
there's
is.
something that
Yeah.
comes into that, where there's that curious mindset of, wait a second, could it be done better another way? And they're really wanting to do that instead of just, hey, type in the number, enter, type in the number, insert. They're actually, really utilizing their mind in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that thinking outside the process is always important for startups because, there is certain things that could be done different ways. And we always see that when people, want to come to bigger businesses, especially want to optimize their accounting. That's, this is the way we've done it for 30 years. Right.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean it's the right and most efficient way to do that. It just means, that's what your accounting department has done for 30 years. So why not take a little look at that and see if there might be another way to do it? But a lot of times, and I'm interested, in your thoughts around that, the accounting department can be so siloed. How do you make sure when you're building something that it's not siloed, that it's seen as we need a seat at the table, especially when we're talking about holistic business strategies, new ERP systems, just being able to have that seat at the table, which accounting really should have, but doesn't often in a typical
They
org.
don't. No, they don't, which is interesting because a lot of times the accountants are, even in a demo, and I'm guilty of this too.
Mhm.
I'll be demoing with the client for a new ERP, and we're like, oh, at the end of the day, we'll give accounting like a half hour to just kind of see this, because at the end of the day, accounting is accounting. There isn't anything crazy that I have seen yet that an ERP can't do for the accounting side of
Mhm.
things. However, they need to be involved in all of those decision makings because each department touches accounting in some way, shape, or form, and
Mhm.
they need to understand how that's working.
Absolutely. And that user group is so important too because it's, the accounts receivable, so we want to make sure
Yeah, to pay
that's
you. Yeah,
yes.
they need to be part of the sales side of things and
Mhm.
understand how is an order coming in, and when does that start to touch the accounting department? Does somebody need to go on a credit hold because, hey,
Mhm.
they haven't been paying us, so no, you can't order anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
all of that. And I think accounting sometimes, like I've talked about too in the past, they're kind of the forgotten folks in
Mhm.
an organization because they're usually quiet. They're not loud. They keep to themselves. I think I'm the anomaly when it comes to accounting, and maybe a few others are like, hey, we like talking to people. This
Yeah.
is fun. The rest of the team is like, be quiet. We're working over here.
I think everyone can think in their career, especially if you worked at a Fortune 500 or greater company, of that scary lady in accounting that like terrifies you, that
Mhm.
you do anything besides go to her cubicle or go into her office and ask her a question because she's just going to absolutely, get you in trouble for doing something. And
Yes.
I think that's what, technically we see a lot of times. And building kind of the new modern accounting department should be more open. So we all have kind of that financial literacy, and we're building a company around financially savvy people. Everyone needs to understand what the ROI of their department, whether you're in sales, whether you're in accounting, whether you're in supply chain, whatever, right? You still need to be focused on how is this company profitable, right? Or how are we best servicing our customers to make money?
Mhm. And
So,
even being part of the entire process too, because it could be, hey, accounting, you're just at the bottom when we're going to send an invoice out, and we'll talk to you if we have a question. But
yeah.
they should even be involved in that whole process, in my opinion. And especially now that AI is being utilized a lot more, there's a real need to understand how data is flowing.
Yeah, especially financial data, because
Yeah.
that is not something we can mess up on. It's just a
No.
no, it's a hard line of we've got to know what our financial lens look like, and it has to be incredibly accurate.
Yes.
On that level, we cannot have mistakes in there. So that if we're going to automate something, that's great, but we need to understand that AI does things like hallucinates, right? That's
Mhm.
we see that all the time in our AI implementation is the software fills in the gap with what it has learned that it wants to exist, right? Or that it's learned that part was in aisle 20, shelf 12 6 months ago. And so it thinks it's there now. It's not there. All of a sudden we have a maintenance issue, right? And that same thing can happen. I'm sure you can give the same example in accounting,
Mhm.
where that,
So many things, yeah,
yeah.
that it's not there yet, and a human has to
Mhm.
oversee it and be able to make those final decisions.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is an interesting question. I feel like I know the answer to it, but I want to just ask you: would you rather implement something simple and intuitive today? Maybe you're a small team. You're like, we got to be able to work it. We've got to get it out to the door, or something that's more robust but complicated, but might scale later.
So I actually went through this process with a client earlier this year of coming off of a larger ERP system that was overkill and they never needed it. We were then looking at Sage or even going to QuickBooks. And we ended up going to QuickBooks because one, it's simple and it is all that they need. Worst case scenario, they may have to go to a Sage in the future, but that's something that is at least 5 to 7 years out before they would ever need to go that, if they even need to do. So I would say if you're going to stay, your growth is not going to come overnight, where if you went to a QuickBooks, you're pretty confident you could stay there for the next 3 years or so, 5 years maybe at most. I would say that then that makes the most sense. Just go simple, intuitive. Your team gets used to it. Your team learns your processes. Then once you have those growing pains of this does not work for us anymore, then that's when you spend all the money and get the really complicated accounting.
Absolutely. And I think that piece of it is really so critical of understanding your requirements,
Hmm.
not what the software vendor wants you to have, not what QuickBooks thinks that you should do, right? You have to define that. And I really am of the opinion that you need someone's help to define that, whether it's, the system specialist, whether it's whatever, right? But you need someone that's dedicated to your business and your goals to really understand what are my requirements,
Hmm.
do I get them? It's just like a business coach in coming up with your offerings. Like, I know I can offer all of these different things, but they really need to get in there, look and see what you need. So you're not spending all of this additional capital on a system that you don't need. And
Right.
now I feel like there's so much you would know better than me of, these opportunities for QuickBooks add-ons and different areas. Customizations can be hard to oversee, but there's lots of options, especially coming down the road with more of these modular based systems.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of cool all that's out there. I remember, what was it, like 6, 7 years ago, people are so against the best of breed. of,
Right.
oh, you got too many plugins. And NetSuite was notorious for being that best of breed model of, hey, we have really good financials, have a really good core. And if you want all these other things, feel free to plug them in and let's go. And now I feel like there's more of that coming back around again because there are really good ancillary solutions out there. And for this client and some of my other ones that are e-commerce, it makes sense because how many of these e-commerce clients are drop ship only? They will never carry any inventory. And so QuickBooks is fine. And like I said, I use like an A2X or ConnectBooks. I bring the data over from Shopify. We're going through and making sure everything's all right, and you're done. You're not battling some crazy ERP solution that's overkill
Absolutely. And
and
it's,
very complicated for a small team.
yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, well, I know that kind of like cuts us off at our 30-minute mark here. Is there any other questions on this list? These have been so awesome. Thank you so much for dropping them in here. About that you really want to address before we close today, or do you feel like that was a good sprinkle?
Let's do this last one right here because I think this is a good one. Would you advise a startup to adopt AI accounting tools before hiring their first in-house finance person? My personal opinion is it depends what you're trying to do, but I would lean towards no, because you want to make sure that the foundation of your accounting department is in place. You want to make sure that you have a person that is extremely competent, knows your industry, knows your company and where you want it to go. Then start understanding how AI is going to be utilized in it. But I have seen some people in the beginning, they'll bring in, some very low AI tools of, hey, I'm going to plug in my financial statement and, have it kind of analyze and look at things. So that I think is, you're not really doing much. But when you're using a lot more to it, you need to make sure that everything is set up properly, because then it goes to garbage in, garbage out. You're going to get garbage results.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and it depends on the AI tool, right?
It
It
does.
totally depends. We're in this, like, we're at the stage in the hype curve, right, of technology where we have the emergence of all of these like ancillary technology companies that are around AI, yet none of them have ever implemented anything in their lives. I
Mm-mm.
promise you don't want to be the first person to do that, especially as an SMB, because there's way too much on the line for you. So it depends on the AI accounting tool. Is it from your ERP vendor that's been established for 50 years and they have the R&D budget in there and you have a support structure? Cool. Maybe that can help you fill in some gaps. But if it's just some Joe Schmo off the street accounting tool, there's about 10,000 of
Oh
them.
my gosh, yes.
And about 900,099 are not legit, and I'm
Mhm.
not even sorry for saying that. It is one of those things where it's just not proven, that technology. So for this type of client, way too big of a risk.
Oh, yeah, and so many of those, and I think it's because it is the trend. Everybody's trying to make a dollar off of, AI with no proven results yet, but hey, we're coming to help you. And I get that there's a lot of legit companies out there that are just starting and getting going, but to your point, there's how many, like, crazy percentage that aren't anything at all, and they're just it's the shiny object syndrome. Buy over here, we got you, and you'll go buy it and you'll be very dissatisfied with it.
Yeah, you probably won't use it, and then it will end up being, one of those technical debts that that you have there on your balance sheet. You don't get a tax return for that. So,
Mhm.
well, this has been such a good conversation, Christy. As always, thank you to the audience for these amazing questions. We'll always go back in and answer those. I know Christy addresses some of them on her TikTok videos as well. So definitely be sure to follow her there. And you do go live most every Monday, right, Christy?
Yep.
With different people from the industry. Sometimes I get the privilege of joining as well. But it is something that, subscribing to her channels and her newsletters is just a great way to get kind of that lean startup SMB type of advice that's completely provider agnostic. A great way to engage in that. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to Christy, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks.